hit pieces. The system is scared to death. I mean, their favorite tool of staging terror attacks and using it to crack down on the public, they are hopping mad, Paul, that it's not working.
They're mad and they're desperate, which is why this week sees a complete onslaught of new 9/11 hit pieces against 9/11 Truth by the likes of BBC, National Geographic and the History Channel, which I find it pretty rich, pretty ironic that the History Channel, every time I turn it on, is talking with, you know, lending credence and credibility to UFOs and alien invasions, giving people platform to spread that topic.
And Bigfoot.
Bigfoot.
Chupacabras.
Yeah, everything that's rife with misinformation, and yet anything to do with 9/11, it's always a hit piece against 9/11 Truth.
Well, because the global banksters don't care if you're obsessed with leprechauns all day, but they are concerned if you know that Building 7 was blown up and they announced it on TV beforehand, or the U.S. troops were already massed in Afghanistan in and around for the invasion, or hijackers trained at U.S. bases. Please continue, Paul.
Well, precisely. They don't want real critical thinking, which is why when they say, oh, well, this is to encourage critical thinking because people are confused about the attacks, it's not that. It's the opposite. Anything that questions the officially state-approved fable of 9/11 is rejected. This is indoctrination. It's the opposite of critical thinking.
But this is great because they're so discredited, and their false flag attack and 7/7 as well is the pretext to sell this total abolition of freedom. Their great new religion of tyranny, the foundational event, like the birth of baby Jesus, this is the birth of baby fake terror. It's all basically been overturned now. And so the more they flail about bleeding out, the more people question because they have no credibility. Don't they get it that when they attack us, they only add credibility? I love it.
Well, I mean, that's why the polls, whereas immediately after 9/11 and in the years following, fear of terrorism amongst the American public was up at 80%, fear that an attack would be about to happen. It went down to 60, and now it's at less than 40. It's in the 30s. So people are not afraid of terrorism because they're starting to find out the real forces behind it.
Well, look, I do British radio, big national. I do the public. I do the talk sport that's private. I do it all the time. The hosts admit that they will beg for callers, Paul, that disagree with me when I'm on like a 2-hour interview sometimes, and one person will call in and they can't even talk. They'll get hundreds of emails and text messages. It's big on UK talk radio. We are the majority. I mean, I saw 5 years ago a poll in the New York Times, scientific, Angus and Reed New York Times, 83% question the official story. I mean, their fable, their hoax, just like the JFK, 92% on average. No, the government did that. And now we have the tapes coming out with Arthur Schlesinger, the famous historian, with Jackie Kennedy saying the government killed him. We've got LBJ's own lawyer, Barr McClellan, coming out saying they killed him. We've got his own mistress coming out, LBJ's mistress. We've got all these witnesses and the head hitman, E. Howard Hunt, who ran assassination teams worldwide. I mean, what more do we need, Paul?
Well, this is exactly why they're freaking out, and this is why they need positive reinforcement, a psychological brainwashing ploy, to ram home the pseudoscience that giant steel frame buildings can collapse in their own footprint at near free fall speed, and it's about reinforcing the
myth that magic passports survive on their own and are found the same day. It's
right, precisely, because people just don't believe it anymore, so they need to get it in at the level where it's 11 and 12-year-olds, who most of whom have never even heard about 9/11 or thought it was something completely different to what it was. So they're getting in very early with this Clockwork Orange-style brainwashing. They'll probably get out the eyebrow clips later on and subject the kids to this, because they say that it's to demolish conspiracy theories and the confusion surrounding the attacks. It's not confusion. It's the fact that people have looked into it for themselves, used critical thinking, God forbid, and are coming to their own conclusions, which is not what they want.
Well, Paul, the same thing is happening in the UK. They've, don't let them show the Al Gore film to kids because it's been proven in court it's a fraud. Here domestically, he gives cussing tirades at the Aspen Institute, saying no one is listening to us anymore, and admitting that he's being laughed at in most quarters. And it turns out the sea levels have dropped now. So Der Spiegel's reporting, global warming makes them drop, not rise. So many of their hoaxes, as the Club of Rome said, 20-something years ago in a report we've covered, they said we're going to use the threat of fake terror to take people's rights, but also climate change and other things to take people's rights. And it's just not working anymore. Now, shifting gears into another 9/11 area, I noticed the cover of Time magazine last week says the new greatest generation. Military veterans, first responders, folks like that, how they're going to lead the leadership, gap in America. The problem is the firemen, the police, the military that were heroes of 9/11, they've been barred from being at ground zero. That's now come out. So they've been barred from being there. And they now, even the French news agency today reports that they've got massive increases in cancer. And the reason that they're barred is because they're afraid to have them there at ground zero with the president and stuff, because they don't buy any of the official fables. They know the dust was deadly. So what does it say about the system having to circle the wagons that even the cops, the military, and the fire people are not welcome at the 10th anniversary?
Well, let's not forget that in the very days after 9/11, the government was caught in a brazen and transparent lie when the EPA announced that the air was safe to breathe. People trusted the government, and years later, the majority of 9/11 first responders are either dead or are sick and dying of these illnesses. So that's why they don't want them there, because the majority of people who are actually involved in the rescue mission are aware of 9/11 truth, because people like We Are Change have held numerous events to support these individuals as the government betrayed them, withheld the payments, which they're now finally being forced to give to them in drips and drops. But exactly, that's why they don't want them at the official memorial. They only want politicians there who can use it as a soapbox, as a photo op, because these first responders are genuine people who have found the truth, who have come to the truth, and many of them obviously witnessed the explosions, the demolitions on the day itself. That's why the government does not want them there.
That's right, Paul. Now, in closing, the biggest news here at the end, and then we're going to go to break and come back with Gerald Celente and this road warrior type scenario that we're facing as a society. LA Times, countless other publications have admitted, okay, the leader there in Libya is Al-Qaeda. We are giving them weapons. That's just the way it is. And it's being reported on the EU counterterrorism coordinator is saying that, yes, Al-Qaeda has gotten the weapons and is basically the new government. Now, this has been too much for Chuck Norris, who's been a big supporter of going after, quote, Muslim extremism. I've interviewed him on the show. He's awake to a lot of stuff, but he's come out and said feds still enable terrorists 10 years after 9/11. And the first thing he quotes is Infowars.com and how he showed the DHS training videos that are going out publicly, where all the terrorists are white people, and it's, quote, minorities reporting them. Now what this is just a rebranding. That, okay, first we went after a minority that was seen as unpopular, like Hitler did, so people would accept taking their rights. Now we're flipping it on a group that's seen, quote, as dominant. And the fact that Chuck Norris is coming out and saying, why are the feds enabling terrorists? And he talks about Anwar al-Awlaki hanging out at the Pentagon, the number 3 in Al-Qaeda, Paul. He talks about just this incredible development here, where the State Department won't release his public records of his travels, quote, for his privacy. No, they're covering up. So Chuck Norris comes within 1 micron of basically saying this whole thing's a fraud. And this is in Town Hall, WorldNet Daily, his columns carried by hundreds of newspapers. I think the system's gone too far. I had neighbors this weekend talking about how our government's putting, and NATO's putting, Al-Qaeda in Libya. Here's the headline at Infowars.com you wrote. Chuck Norris warns of DHS war on white Americans. What do you make of this? I mean, this is just too much for people to be told you're giving your rights up because of Al-Qaeda, but the first responders aren't allowed at ground zero. And by the way, the big Al-Qaeda is whitey.
Well, it's waking up a lot of conservatives who wouldn't otherwise come to these conclusions, because they've seen these DHS public service announcements and they've seen that in them the vast majority of the terrorists portrayed are white middle-class Americans, and the people reporting them are minorities. Now, if it was the other side, where it was all black people being the terrorists and all white people reporting them to the authorities, that would be just as scary. The fact is, the DHS is race baiting, and yet the Southern Poverty Law Center a few days ago comes out, admits that these DHS videos do contain, quote, mostly white terrorists, while actors portraying citizens who report their suspicious activities are all minorities. That's a quote. So they admit it. They admit that there's a racial dimension to these videos, and yet
they've got some ads where it's nothing but white people that are the terrorists. The point is that they're clearly rebranding it. And 3 years ago, we got the internal Homeland Security documents, Paul, and the whole thing was about gun owners, conservatives, libertarians, Ron Paul supporters, which then the left arm of the globalist vulture, Chris Matthews, says is all white. So, quote, minorities don't feel like they're welcome. But from a liberal perspective, it's not racism, but they sell, hey, you're not welcome there. Then they say, okay, it's only white. You're not welcome to be a libertarian if you're not white. But again, it's the controlled establishment limousine liberal saying that. And then once, okay, it's all white, okay, now you're the Al-Qaeda.
Precisely. And I mean, they admit in the video that it's all white people, and yet then they accuse you of crossing the Rubicon of race and believing in paranoid conspiracy theories simply for pointing the fact out. And not to mention the FBI, their extremist probe called Operation Vigilant Eagle was all about targeting returning veterans as terrorists. We had, of course, the Boy Scouts Explorer program, where Boy Scouts are trained by Homeland Security to hunt down disgruntled Iraq war veterans, which again is pretty rich, because while the federal government is simultaneously sending planes to bomb Libya in support of this Libyan Islamic fighting group, which killed US troops in Iraq, part of the Al-Qaeda group that they support now, simultaneously they're saying that returning veterans who fought in Iraq against these terrorists now supported by the US government are the new security threat for domestic terrorism. So it completely reveals the fact that, stretching far back as 10 years ago, you had the video where FEMA was saying the founding fathers were terrorists. This has been a gradual build-up, and we've been tracking it for over a decade, and now it's coming to fruition.
Well, Paul, that's what this has always been about by the globalist, is basically saying everybody's a terrorist. I saw reports early on in 2002 where they said a priest, a woman with a baby, someone wearing blue jeans, a cell phone. I mean, we published these Homeland Security documents we were sent where they teach cops everybody's a terrorist. But for the public, they take an unpopular group on average who they just blame for 9/11, Muslims. They say they're all extremist. And people say, well, that's a minority. Take their rights. You know, it's a tribal idea. Now they flip it on all the good old boys that said, yeah, or round up all the brown people. Now they're saying, no, it's you. It's the white guy. I mean,